Well, a going uiste, the falter of a stacker madden, Gadi Ostan the Skellige, Tan Imshire, Fos, Ovrin Biog Vogul, Tashe, Cruig Galore, of Martian Fain, Neil Ain, Boschuk, no, Nilche Fluk, Madden, Dertha Lungarev, Dini Orha, Ovrin Biog Fluk or Air, Nather Bashin, and Boschuk, no, they can tell it. It's great to be here for day 2 of Ireland's Edge. I hope all of you had a good day yesterday. It was a provocative and very stimulating and very challenging day. There were some expositions about, where we're going and how we're going to navigate the difficult waters ahead when we're talking about surveillance and climate and all of those things. And all of you here yesterday, many of you who I met walking around last night, were very taken in a very emotional way by some of the subjects and some of the evidence and some of the passionate stories told particularly by the people who are local to here about the Maharees and that Maharees resident wondering in 50 years' time, will the place actually exist if we continue going the way that we're going? And I think that was very sobering, and many people said afterwards that they were very moved by this. We're going to have a very interesting day today. There's going to be some music, there's going to be some virtual reality, and there's going to be a fair amount of sport. And so we're looking forward to a very interesting and a very stimulating day. Before we begin with our first 2 guests and friends, I would like to say that this Ireland's Edge piece here that we do began some years back, and I'll just tell a little story about how myself and Eamon Sinnott of Intel, who's sitting here with us, strange bedfellows, somebody once said to me, said they saw a photograph of myself and Eamon somewhere and said, what are the 2 of you guys doing together? He's an engineer and he knows how things work and you don't. You're all airy-fairy and, talking about, abstract ideas about this, that, and the other. And it would seem to me that you guys are on parallel lines. And that may have been true at one point. And Eamon, I'm just going to just say that when we met first, and I remember it very, very well, and it was both challenging and amusing, we were in Deerfield, which is the residence of the American ambassador in the Phoenix Park. And I got up to speak, and I was speaking about bringing it all back home. I was speaking about that Atlantic bridge between Ireland and America and how we engage with each other and how we've had like a fantastic cultural exchange over the years and how we would deepen and strengthen our relationships if we looked at our relationship through the prism of culture and music and art. And then we began talking about innovation, and we talked a little bit about design. Not right, Eamon? We're talking about design. And I was saying that there's this magnificent company in Leakslip, and not alone do they manufacture the most complex technologies that ever known to man, but they design them as well. Now I said, isn't this fantastic? And it's an engagement. And then with the slip of the tongue, referred to the company as Dell. right. And hung my head in shame, and have been reminded ever since by Eamon Sinnott, who's sitting here, as the man who runs Intel Ireland. But our relationship, despite this very unpromising beginning, right, has flourished and developed into a great relationship and a great friendship. And we have taken other voices into the Intel campus and have had a magnificent experience there, and we've televised that and we've sent it out to the world, because this place is, in fact, a place where things are designed, where complex technologies, as Eamon will say this much better than I will, that some of the most complex things that humans do are manufactured in this place. The inward investment into Ireland from Intel is 15 billion euros, and it is hugely significant in every way. And at this point in time, Intel are expanding the size of their operation here. And I would just like to recognize and to thank Eamon for not just the intellectual support and the friendship, but for the investment that he has made in us engaging in rooms like this to see where it is we might be going, to ask pertinent and important questions about who we are and where we might be going. And I mean, for that, we are very, very grateful. And I'd like if you'd give a very warm thanks to Mr. Eamon, please. Thank you. Eamon, would you like to correct me on the Dell issue?
Thank you, Philip. What notions we had 5 years ago.
Yes.
When we were introduced by the American ambassador then, Mr. O'Malley.
That's right.
And I do remember fondly, being excited to meet you, Philip. Not only were you an accomplished broadcaster and musician, I used to go see you in the Wexford Arts Centre in Scullion. Very excited to meet you. Imagine how you crushed me with that reference to the fella from Dell. Your man from Dell there was a great fella.
I said the man from Dell there is fantastic.
And Dell, another great company. But indeed, we had notions, and what has happened over the last 5 years has been spectacular, certainly for me. The idea that we could come to places like this where I have no other experience of, been able to share perspectives that are well outside our normal echo chamber, hopefully for everybody. I don't know of a conference or a gathering like it anywhere. And it's a great privilege for us to be involved in it and involved in the discussion. And just in conclusion, because I had promised myself never to try and follow you on public speaking anywhere, to say thank you for the privilege and the opportunity to continue this partnership, Philip. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Eamon. And just to say, everybody, that we signed a 3-year engagement, a 3-year deal yesterday that will take us on. It'll take us to independence, the Civil War, and beyond. Right. So I think everything will be grand. So, going to meet him all good, Eamon. So we're going to get on with the morning. I want to introduce to you two truly remarkable people. Would you put your hands together, please, and welcome one of the world's great choreographers, a great artist, and a man who it's a privilege to welcome to West Kerry. He now lives here, and we won't be letting go. Would you welcome, please, Mr. Michael Keegan-Dolan.
How you doing?
Right. And from one of the most premier, if not the premier, traditional music families of Ireland, would you welcome the exquisite and extraordinary musician and man that is Cormac Begley. Right, here we are. So I'm going to begin at the beginning and talk to you for a minute, Michael, and just say, tell me a little bit about yourself, your growing up in Dublin, and how you fell into the life of a dancer and a choreographer.
Oh, no. That's... how long do we have?
39 minutes and 22 seconds.
Okay, so... okay. So I'll take 39 minutes and...
yeah. Cormac's tunes are only 22 seconds long.
I grew up on the north side of Dublin. I was born in 1969. Yeah. So, times were hard. We were kind of brought up to emigrate. I can remember that culture being a powerful force. We were all talking about where we would go when we did our leaving, where we would literally go. But before I did my leaving, I knew I wanted to be a dancer. I always wanted to be a dancer. In fact, I think I was born in the wrong place. I should have been born in India or somewhere.
Yes.
But I always had that feeling that I wanted to be a dancer, and I just found my way, or it found me. It felt like there was a kind of a reciprocal relationship between me and the art form,
right.
Because I was a long way from it. In being born in 1969 on the north side of Dublin.
Right.
But so I found my way. Yeah.
And what was the dance world in Ireland like then? I mean, if you wanted to be a dancer, what did you do?
I ended up going to Billy Barry's school in Fairview when I was 17.
Was it good?
It was what it was, and it certainly got me going. When at that time, Fame was the TV series Fame, when Leroy were significant cultural forces, and then Flashdance came along. Breakdance was happening. So there was a lot going on in the kind of in our cultural space that connected to dance. So I went along to Billy Barry's daughter's class, and all the girls are in leg warmers and headbands and leotards, and it was really cool. And luckily, the fellow who came with me was the hooker on the rugby team in St. Paul's in Raheny. His mother taught ballroom dancing, so he legitimized the whole kind of event.
Right.
He is now a spine surgeon, that fella. So it was a very interesting and entertaining time.
Right. So from there,
I remember the moment when I knew I wanted to spend my life dancing, and we were preparing for Sunday Night Live at the Gaiety. And I was 17 years old, and we were learning a section from West Side Story, and I was the jet, and my friend who was the hooker was a shark. And I looked over at him, and he looked at me, and we were surrounded by dancers, and I just thought, I'm going to do this. Right. So I did my leaving. My father was an academic, and he said to me, look, Michael, he says, if you get 4 A's in your leaving, you can do what you want. So I went and got my 4 A's in the leaving.
And did what you wanted.
And I did what I wanted. And he was a man, he was a great man, my father, and he found it difficult initially, that he probably felt I was throwing it all away, because I put down law in Trinity on my CEO form, and I got into study law in Trinity.
Yes.
But I went to the Central School of Ballet in London instead. And my father drove me to the airport, and it was a bit of a sad moment for him, because I guess I was his youngest son. He thought that I would be a barrister, and maybe I'd play rugby for Trinity because I was very quick. I was a very fast runner. But instead I went to London to the Central School of Ballet. And I think there was a few difficult years then for me and my father. But we kept it going, and eventually we got there.
He was reconciled to your career.
Yes, because I started making politically charged work shortly before he died, and he loved that. In fact, he wrote a letter to the Irish Times defending me after someone had written a letter defaming me. The last line of the letter I remember in 2005 was, "Stick to the day job, Keegan-Dolan." meaning I was experimenting with text and with song and with politics in my work, and they figured that dancers should stick to the dancing. And my father wrote in explaining that actually he thought that kind of anonymously, and the letter got printed. So that kind of really fixed or healed our relationship, that letter. It was so important. And then he died shortly after that. But it found a resolution, that story.
And how did you make the leap from being a dancer to a choreographer?
I leaped.
Right.
How did I make I tell you how I made it, because I was a terrible dancer.
Right, you heard it here first.
Yes, so no, I suffered from, I had delusions of grandeur. So I used to look at photographs of Rudolf Nureyev, and kind of copy his nostrils, kind of go, and think that maybe one day. But in my first term at ballet school, the principal, a great woman called Anne Stannard, invited me to the office and said to me very politely that what I should maybe consider an alternative. And she talked about Cats a lot, the musical.
Yeah.
She said, "Have you considered maybe auditioning for Cats?" But around the same time, I was very lucky. I had a choreography teacher at school, a wonderful woman called Cecilia Darker, and she started telling me about choreography.
Right.
So I made a piece in my first term, and it was really good. I think people, you know, you don't know if it's good or bad, but you notice that people are looking at it in a certain way and kind of going,
right.
Huh. And then I thought, okay, I'm never going to be the kind of dancer that my delusions were speaking to me about.
Yeah.
But maybe I could become a choreographer. And as soon as I realized that there was a whole big bad world out there of choreography, then I started making work from really early on. So I started dancing at around 17, 18 properly, and I was choreographing when I was 19.
Right.
And now I'm 51, and I still don't know how to choreograph.
Well, a lot of people would disagree would disagree with that. Anybody who's seen your shows lately here in Ireland, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Music and dance.
Yeah.
Some great traditional musicians are going to come to you in a minute, Cormac, but some great traditional musicians, like people like Johnny Leary, the great box player from Sliabh Locher, now sadly passed away, used to say, it's our job to put the rhythm under the dancer's foot.
Yeah, he's right.
Now, hang on a minute, say that again?
He was right.
Right, okay. So what sort of a relationship do you have with music, whether it's Stravinsky or whether it's
Begley.
Cormac?
An intense, never-ending relationship. My partner, Rochelle, who's probably must be here somewhere, how are you? She'll tell you, like, the music goes on early and it goes off late, like, so it's just constantly playing in the house.
Right.
And if it's not playing in the house, it's playing in the car.
Or it's
in my
playing
head.
in your head.
Yes, so I have this thing that when I hear music, I become, how do I explain this without sounding like I have issues? I start to involuntarily move. I start to I mean, most people have this to some lesser or greater extent, but with me, it's a little bit exaggerated. So if he starts playing a tune, most people will at Cormac Begley concert, everyone starts kind of going, but I'll probably start going just a little bit more, and then that starts to become, and then I'll get a really good dancer in the room, and I'll say to them, what about, and they'll start going, and then it becomes a choreography. But so music is really fundamental to my existence. I think, I mean, I love music. I love musicians. I love composers. I love music. I love music. There you have it.
Because there is no dance without the music, so there's not.
Well, there is a whole movement in the contemporary dance world that doesn't think like me, and power to them. And there's some fantastic work that's made in silence, or against the music, or under the music, or over the music, or in spite of the music. But I'm just not one of those kinds of people. Yes. I love to try to find this union, this harmony, this kind of synergy between the player and the dancer. And then I love it when this third thing starts to become evident that you can't quite explain or describe. This kind of where 1 + 1 makes 3, you know. Nice. And when I'm around, when that happens, I feel so alive and happy.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, so we were talking about music. Cormac, will you play a tune to begin with? So that we can move around, like we're going to sort of get going. And we're going to talk about we'll talk about Mom and talk about the family in a bit. How did you end up with the concertina? I mean, there's box players and fiddle players and singers in the family. And you chose the concertina, or did the concertina choose you?
Well, I had a cousin, and I still have a cousin called Aegon Lynch.
Yeah.
And I thought he was really cool when I was growing up. He was like maybe 10 years older than me. And he had a great haircut, very good-looking fella, and he was really cool when he was playing the concertina. And I remember seeing him and hearing a great concertina player called Mary McNamara from East Clare.
Yes.
And I was really inspired by her. When I was 16 years old, I remember hearing her album and knowing that I wanted to play music for the first time. But I just love the shape of it. It's like designed by a scientist called Charles Wheatstone in 1829. Hexagonal. It's a
class of an engineer, was he?
An engineer, and it's like.
Geez, I'm coming on.
But they're so complicated to make, and they're the same family as the accordion, so I wasn't too far away. My father plays the accordion, my uncles on both sides play, and it's a very popular instrument around here over the last 100 or so years. So that's how we came about it.
And you have a selection of concertinas there. Which one are you going to pick?
I'm not sure what to play. I might play. I think I'll play this one. This is the most. This is one of the newest members of the family of concertinas. It's a bass concertina, and there's only 6 of these in the world, and I happen to have the second one here as well. I studied,
there's a funded program we're opening to get the other 4.
Well, I studied psychology at university, and one of the first things I learned from that is that everybody who studies psychology has really deep issues. And one of my many issues is my addiction to these instruments. But I got this one designed. The grandfather of a concertina is her grandmother is a juice harp. Put up against your wall, you click it, and then that's the parent of a harmonica, which you play yourself.
Yep.
But a concertina is made up of 3 harmonicas, 1, 2, and 3, cut in half, and continue on this side, 1, 2, and 3. And instead of your lungs, you've got these big lungs. So they're all related to accordions, baldoni and all that, and piano accordion. But I'll play a tune on this. I got these levers designed. Every button on the concertina has a different sound when you push and pull. But when you press a button, it lifts up a lever inside, just like a flute. If you see a flute, or if you see it inside of it, sometimes accordions open, you can see the mechanics of it. Different sound when you push and pull. I got these levers designed. It's the only concertina that has this. There's 2 on this side and 3 on this side. And you can lever it down, and it works in the same way as a button, but you can hook it into place, and it allows for sound to come out, and the same sound to come in and out without sacrificing one of your fingers. So I'll play a tune called The Morning Dew into a slow piece called Bug Brained and Chandelier. So.
Perfect morning music.
There's one other cool thing you can do with the lever. You can get some creepy sounds. So.
A bit droopy, that microphone.
Yeah.
But an amazing sound from that. Michael, let me just ask you, where did you first meet Cormac?
Liam O'Wanley introduced me to Cormac.
Right.
And the very first time I met him was in a workshop we'd arranged in Dunleary, and Cormac walked into that, and he had long, curly, red hair at the time, and he was gorgeous. He still is good looking now. But yeah, I met him then, yeah.
Yes. And did you work together
Yeah.
to begin with. So you had worked with music that could be described, I suppose, loosely as classical music, maybe out of a European art music tradition.
Yeah.
And maybe for the first time you were finding yourself engaging with Irish music.
Yeah.
Or with Irish traditional music.
Yeah.
And, you know, Irish traditional music, I suppose, would have been associated with, you know, dancing a jig or doing a set or, you know, latterly, you know, what became a river dance phenomenon. What was attractive to you about the notion of working with the grammar of Irish music?
There's a couple of things. One moment, I remember we were in I used to live in Longford because my father was a Longford man. And there was one night where Cormac was playing polkas. And I began to realize that there was a kind of one became possessed in the company of this music. And I know that word possession sounds like a kind of a dark or not such a positive idea. But I found that this music had a kind of a power that was, I guess also in Stravinsky, there was a kind of a way that possessed you. It took you over. And then I began to think about, and I began to read a bit about Padre O'Riordan was saying about Sean O'Riordan's legacy and about how the history of our courts breaking up and the fact that our classical music tradition stopped at a point.
So they declined, yeah.
Yeah, and then it became kind of obvious that this is our classical music to me. That in a sense these names are kind of meaningless. That music is music. As Duke Ellington said, there's only good music and bad music. There's only two types of music.
Sure.
And then Martin Hayes talked about this too, about how we tend to attribute importance to things that are complicated. You know, if something like Stravinsky is cool because it's complex, you know, you know what I mean? If something's difficult to play, therefore it must be good. But in fact, that is not necessarily the truth at all. Like a simple tune played by a master can transcend a complex tune played by an idiot, you know? So I began to realize the other thought I'd like to share was that, like, my father could speak fluent Irish, but I never heard him speak a word of it. But I heard him speak French all of the time, and that somehow the people of his generation, he was 51 years older than me, but he was educated in a way to look to Europe for kind of inspiration, for enlightened thoughts, and he had been educated to look away from his own tradition. That somehow that tradition was in some way harking back to something dark and impoverished and
failure, maybe.
All of that. And I don't want to go there. But I began to, thanks to my father and Cormac Begley and Padre O'Riordan and Martin Hayes and Liam Wainley and Philip King, that I began to realize that we have everything here.
Sure.
Everything is here.
Right.
So if someone asks me what piece of music do you want to make your next dance to, I will always look to this canon now, happily. I mean, I also love Stravinsky.
Sure. But I mean, you had been choreographing to great acclaim, you know, shows around the world with this classical music, and you came home, so to speak. And I mean coming home in the sense that you came home to this music, or you came home to this portrait of a possibility of engaging with this music and making work and making dance, where you married these two things together.
Yeah.
And putting the rhythm under the dancer's foot, you know, and working in a way with this music. So I just want to just ask both of you, I had the real privilege of sitting in a room, well, the three of us here, over a year ago, went to Berlin, and we went to a room in Berlin and met a guy called Andre de Ridder, and a group of virtuoso young, I suppose, classical music players, we could say that, who were gathered together from around Europe. And Michael and Cormac sat down and played music with a small bunch of musicians for a day, and then we got on the plane and came back home. And a seed was clearly sown, and some months later, after a lot of huffing and puffing and scheduling and all sorts of other bits and pieces, in the hall in Feothanaí, about 7 miles back west from here, 12 contemporary dancers from around the world, a bunch of musicians from around Europe, and Cormac and Michael and Katie Sanderson cooking the food, and a team of people from here went into a room with an idea And meditation started at 8 o'clock every morning, and at 9:30 work began after breakfast, and that went on for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was, for me, a transformative and transforming process to be engaged in and to be involved in. Tell us a little bit about it, and tell us a little bit about, first of all, about your process, Michael, about where you go through the work that transmutes the abstract idea into a tangible thing that eventually goes onto a stage.
Okay, God, well, you said it so beautifully, Philip. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can.
I'm only saying that. I mean, that's you have to tell the people what went on.
What went on is you.
The meditation was great.
Well, you got to find. It's all about environment and food and energy. So you got to find. You go to a space that it would lift people, would inspire people. So this is the Halla na Feothanaí at the end of the peninsula here.
Yeah.
You walk out that door, you see, Connacht Vrean, and you go the other way, you see, the Atlantic Ocean, and you're like, this is amazing. And then, Katie's there cooking extraordinary food from really good ingredients, mostly found locally or grown in Ireland, are organic. I was very lucky to meet an extremely gifted and brilliant yoga teacher when I was in my early 30s, and he gave me a practice that became the fundamental basis for my work. And you gather around yourself good, strong, curious people who are up for it's a long old 10-week arc to be in a room together, and you do very little then. Actually, you basically have to turn up and not say too many stupid things, and the work kind of begins to do itself. Once you have people of that quality in a space together, they all know what to do. It's like wolves running after up a mountain. It just starts to do itself, yeah. and then you sit back, and it starts to happen.
And it appeared to me at some stages like there was a coalition, but also there was a collision.
Yeah,
there was a collision of grammar. Mm-hmm. There was a collision of a traditional music grammar, which in its way, is very formed, and Cormac, you come out of a formed grammar. I remember Thomas Bartlett from the Gloaming saying to me, when he arrived into playing Irish music, he had no red lines. In other words, he didn't know anything about this music. He wasn't brought up with the music. He didn't have any of the tradition of the music in him. He said, I just played whatever I liked, or whatever I could. But there was nothing. Sort of, you grew up with all of the form and all of the grammar as part of your being. And when you found yourself in a world like this, did you have to adapt and bend that grammar, or be open to experimenting with it and sort of kicking over the traces and breaking the rules?
Well, I guess I was a bit reluctant at the start when it came to getting Stargaze or a classical group in on the project, because a lot of the projects I'd heard up to now, the combination traditional music and classical, it was always seemed to be very compromised, and it always compromised traditional music. So I was a bit, I wasn't overly excited about it until after we met them in Berlin. I think it takes a special group of classical players to be malleable and open. So I'd like to think that the traditional side wasn't that compromised in this project, and there was a good bit of jarring throughout the process, which is natural.
Michael said it's perfect, like.
Oh yeah, but like that's I think that's essential for the meeting and the clash of worlds. But yeah, I grew up in a traditional music family. I think like people look at traditional families. Oh yeah.
Morning.
People look at traditional music families, like my parents' family would have grown up singing traditional songs and playing traditional music, but they would have also grown up singing songs, contemporary songs, and learning songs that they saw in Indian movies and stuff like that. So it wasn't this pure traditional music only, like it wasn't the only thing they played. And my dad is very, very open to listen to lots of different music, so you do learn grammars from lots of other genres. but there's this, I think with traditional music, it's very hard to define what it is. And I remember going to a concert with Padre playing with these this son of Indian musicians, traditional musicians, and they had a job to compose music from the other tradition. So Padre wrote a tune from the Indian tradition, from what he knew about it, and then when he played it, the master said to him, "No, you can't do that because that note can't precede that." And he had all these rules written out. But then when the Indian master wrote an Irish tune, Padre was like, "No, you can't do that either. That doesn't sound." But the Indian musician knew he could refer to certain rules, but Padre couldn't. It's kind of like it's a intuitive, guttural feeling. So that I think I understand. I can tell if a tune is newly composed or if it's an old tune.
Right.
And I don't know what it is, because a lot of these old tunes, they've been distilled over time. They go back hundreds of years, and when I hear a tune, I can hear and I can see people's experience. Like they don't grow on trees; they come from people. And if you can, a lot of these tunes that have lasted over the centuries, they're meaningful. They're still emotionally relevant, and it just shows to me that we haven't changed that much over the last, like emotionally, we haven't changed that much over the last couple of hundred years.
Sure.
That they're still relevant, but there's something in that structure that I can't really pinpoint, but it's there. Yeah. So when it comes to meeting classical musicians who don't have that background, I think traditional musicians, some of them suffer from being inarticulate. I can't even say that word. But, about what they do, but they feel it and they know it, and so that was a bit of a clash. But we got there. We did.
You got that, and I mean, and the shows. I mean, you will. Michael alluded very briefly to just the way in which we feel about our own music, and the way in which we feel about language. Agus tá Micheál fáil gaidlean sa agus tá gaidle gugus gutsa. It just being a psychology PhD, Cormac, has that been a help to you? And I mean this seriously, in thinking about the music, in thinking about Irish music and Ireland and its music and its language and its identity and its feeling for itself, if you know what I mean. Because you investigate some of these things in your thesis, which is very, very interesting.
I guess I just see parallels between finding your own musical identity and finding your own personal identity as a person. If you go into a lot of it comes down to validation and looking for validity from other people, rather than looking for self-validation. And that's seen, if I hear somebody playing the concertina, I can tell within 3 or 4 seconds who their sensei is or who their master is. And often when I'm giving workshops, if I came in tomorrow dressed like Michael and started do all these moves like Michael and had a Longford/Dublin accent, and he's after seeing me today, and I came in the next day talking like Philip, and what would you think of me that not being consistent? What would you? How would you value me? How would you? You probably wonder what I was like. Yeah, who is this fella? But when I hear music and I hear people playing music, and it is a natural thing. You do imitate people up to a point, and then but with music, I don't think it's, when I hear people imitating other people, or it's kind of looking to their master. But it's not really okay for me to come in tomorrow dressed like one of you, talking like he. And I kind of feel yourself. When I hear music, I think I feel it's the same way. I don't think it's all right to be up to a point. It's important to imitate people, but then beyond that, to get the direction to be yourself and to kind of warts and all accept yourself and to value your feeling and value your experiences. as much as you value, or more maybe, than you value other people's, that you look for, you may have in the past looked for validity from. So that's kind of like, in terms of, music and psychology, I think a lot along those
are related in some way. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very interesting to hear you say that, and some of the things that are thrown up here, given the conversation that we had yesterday about identity and about the issues about where we're going, and maybe differentiating a new narrative for Ireland that might be helpful to us to help us through into this new and strange and sometimes quite dystopian and disturbing world that was described to us yesterday. You moved here, Michael.
Yep.
You moved to the west of Ireland. You came to this particular place. How are you finding it? Are you happy to be here?
Yes.
And because we love having you here. You're not going to be going anywhere soon.
No. Well, I have to go to London on Sunday. But no.
And you're choreographing something for, what is it?
It's with Sam Amadon and Nico Mooley.
Yeah.
At Sadler's Wells, yeah.
Yes.
But no, the moment, I had an interesting moment with West Kerry where I had to decide whether if I could meet it. And if I could meet it. And I suppose we called the piece Mom because moms were places, where you might meet another people from another townland.
And the gap and the light. Yeah.
So I had a moment up in the mountains actually, where I thought, because I grew up in Dublin, but really I'm from the Midlands. Like my DNA, I feel the Midlands. I speak the Midlands. I recognise the ash trees and the bogs. But here I feel I'm not from here, and I know it, but there's something that I really would like to experience that is here. Yes. But I had a moment, and I thought, can I meet this? Do I have enough of something? I can't find the words to describe it.
Sure.
And I decided I did. Or I'll die trying, so I'm going to stay. But in that moment, I could have left, It's, people have said to me, Michael, the weather in West Kerry, And I was like, no, sure, the weather in Longford is terrible. I'd be able to cope. But you have no idea until you live in it. I live in the Glens. I live in the North Glens. And it's just kind of the other side of the Connor. Connor passes over the Mom there, Mom on Lehid. And when the wind comes over there from the north, it is biblical. It's you literally are in fear of your life lying in your bed going, but that's good, That makes you realise what you are in all of this majesty,
Yes. Yes.
So I came here for a few reasons. So I have two children, Milo and Ellie, and I felt like, wouldn't it be amazing if their first language was Irish and their second language was French and their third language was English? If that could happen. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Mom.
Yes.
Where can people see it? A whole load of people here said to me, we missed it. Where are we going to be able to see it?
You can see it in London, in Sadler's Wells in February. You can see it in Perth in the International Pest Festival. In West Australia. You can see it in Wellington.
In New Zealand.
In New Zealand.
Oh, geez, a short trip.
But for sure.
We get the boat now.
Yeah, we're going to have to get a boat. But we would love to see it here one day again. Yes. And we'll work hard to make that happen.
Well, we've been scheming, and Teac, Damsa, which is the name of the company that Michael runs, had their board meeting here in West Kerry on Thursday, and we're hopefully you will be able to have that facility, that engagement with that new building, and put that building into shape. And isn't it just absolutely remarkable that people at the top, at the apex of this art and this level of creativity are drawn to the west of Ireland at this time to engage with some things that are purely traditional, to bring something new to bear, and to put something back into the place, because I consistently worry that what we are seeing is that sometimes the resource, and we talked about resources yesterday, which is finite, that if we keep excavating the resource, if we keep open cast mining the resource and don't put anything back in, as the ad says on the old radio, when it's gone, it's gone. And, so I'm just going to say to you that it's just brilliant to have you here, and it's inspirational to have you here. And to work in this way, because you just attract remarkable people to work with you, and your process is uplifting and very powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. True. I'm going to ask you just a slightly difficult question, Cormac. That thing that you said about polkas.
Yes.
Again, I don't know whether it's the psychology thing that. Would you like to tell the folks, the sort of attributes that you really have to have if you're going to play these polkas correctly?
Yeah, well, it's great sitting beside two great polka players. It's said around in West Kerry that to be able to play polkas well, that you have to be sexually frustrated. And so on that note, I might play some polkas. Yeah, just,
well, play that good long set of tunes you were talking about.
I'll play the first one. I'll play a tune from Mom, actually, and I might go into that bug brain that I didn't manage to, because that mic.
It won't fall down anymore.
Yeah. Okay,
The whole stage is bouncing up and down.
So this is from Mom, is it?
The first tune, I forget the name of it now. The Races of Ballyhooly.
Right.
So that's from County Cork. So I know Rochelle is down there in the corner, and she usually dances.
Where is Rochelle?
She's
She's hiding. Hello. Are you going to do a little? Well, when you're to Cormac Begley. And Michael Keegan-Dolan. Right. We're done. See ya. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Woohoo!